Yarek, Aisha, Behrad, 2 episodes every week.
Beancast, Product Innovation and UX Design Podcast.
Cool. Alice, so we were talking about VP of product and a surfer, how does these two come along? How is that possible?
I think it sounded like the two worlds just do not somehow like exist in one picture. I think with the remote work, you can actually make that happen, right? But yeah, it is indeed. I even had I used to introduce myself like that I'm a product, the surfer inside and a product manager outside. And when I say surfing, I really talk about the ocean wave surfing, right? I think like here in Germany there is a different understanding of like what surfing could be, and very oftenly considering windsurfing as a surfing, but this is not the jam that I have tried, not yet at least. And yeah, I'm really like a passionate surfer, I would say, which started roughly from me joining the startup world. I mean, I think it kind of like coexisted back. I think I started surfing, or like I discovered surfing for myself in 2015 with my first trip to Portugal, which is a horrible place to start with surfing because the ocean is just so freaking cold. And the good thing is like it can only get better from that, right? And then when I continued my adventures surfing in Bali and also in California, South Africa, which is also not not really not very warm, right? It all like just went up from there. Yeah.
Was there like incident during your surfing that you were like, oh, I don't know how to handle this?
For sure. Actually, I do see many parallels in product management and or generally like in entrepreneurship and startup life, and also in relationship with the ocean and also with surfing. Especially my favorite one is when in doubt, paddle out. Yeah, so and exactly, it's all about like gathering the data, right, to make the right decision, where to enter, like how to get to the right spot at which point in time. So it's all about timing, right? Not only like when to start, but like when to take off. And there is a lot of I think like a lot of analogies with the business as well. And also while you are riding the wave, right, already thinking about what's the next one, when is the right point to exit it, and like how can you make sure that you can serve the next wave, right, which is also in business, like while you are riding the hype of the existing business model, like how will it actually transform in the future. So there's like sometimes I'm just sitting there in the lineup and like thinking about all this deep thoughts and merging the world of a product management and also the surfing itself. But back to your question, it was, I think, the most abusive relationship with the ocean I had during my time in Maldives. And of course, that was also sort of not my mistake, but definitely the conditions that were there at that time. And they are basically more for professionals. And with me being a workaholic and a surfer, you kind of have to choose one. And I'm so far like doubling down on work more than on my surfing, unfortunately. And that's of course like Maldives is the place where it takes your surfing to like a very, very, very challenging place, especially during the summer season. And that's when I never experienced the power of the wave. So I think somehow like every play, like all the continents that I've been surfing, the surfing before, it was somehow I just never was hit that much by the wave. But like when when in August you are on Maldives and you are not in the right spot, and this is not your wave, and you fall, then it's quite heavy. It really goes like, it's, it's like the wall of concrete is kind of like smashing you, and yeah, quite interesting lessons that you get out of it. But
That's
of course,
intense.
never, never losing the passion, right? Who never, who never falls, never rises. So that's that. But that was like a base. That was an experience that made me rethink, and actually it was also quite positive for me in terms of me being more dedicated to putting the work during the dry season for me, in terms of like not being in the ocean. And that was a time when I came back to Berlin and started my work with a swimming instructor, where actually before, like, my swimming was, I'm generally fit, and like I go to the gym 3 to 4 times, sometimes 5 times a week. But understanding that, like, that water is a totally different ecosystem, and that your body, when immersed in this ecosystem, it just behaves differently. Like your feet, you're not that, if you're not used to it, you basically have to start from there, step number -1 or 0. And in order to reduce this adaptation curve, I started with a serious lessons on paddling, and like learning how to how to work on my stroke, how to master the freestyle in swimming, in order to come to the ocean more prepared, doing my homework. And as Will Smith says, if you're ready, you don't need time to get ready. And that's exactly where I'd like to be, right? Just grabbing the surfboard and go right there, not needing the time to get ready, to get up to speed.
That's
But
right. Uh,
it's a lifelong hobby. I'm not time boxing myself on this one.
Oh, that's really great. When you have a long-term view on something, that really helps you. Whenever I don't do like workout, I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel bad. But when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do workout till probably the last day of my existence, then I can relax a bit.
Yeah, I'm a little more disciplined on this one. If it's a swimming, and if it's the only, especially in the during the pandemic, right? Like, we had a really weird opening times for the pools, because the time slot was so just like so random, and the only ones that worked for me was in the morning, and that was 6:30 or something. Like, the pool would just open at 6, right? And then if you want to make it, you have to wake up at 5 or 5:30. And I was quite dedicated, gained quite some time back in the morning after like having those days when going to the workout and swimming. Yeah.
You are a VP of product at GoPuls,
Right.
intense work, and you have a
Yeah.
very intense sport as a hobby. Do you see any correlation here?
Actually, like sport, I think the reason why I can survive and excel in my job, and also in this intense environment, is because I get this energy from the intense sport. I don't think that, like, a classic, I have nothing against yoga, I'm also practicing that, but I don't think that I would get that much of the energy from like a milder activities. So it's really, yeah. I actually don't know how exactly that works, but I need probably, like, spending so much energy at work. I also need like a significant amount of endorphins, like going my way and doing some intense workouts. Or maybe this is just like my preference, but for me, it's not about, it's not about just, nice to have. I really need to work out in order to stay top
100%.
notch at my job. Yeah. Yeah,
No,
some
it's
people need
100%.
sleep. Say it again.
No, yeah, 100%. Like I think like whenever like you have this intense job and you absorb a lot of stress,
Yeah, yeah, and you need
and
to bring
then
your
you need to
A
like
game.
release it.
Exactly, and this is also like touching on the like topic of their leadership in a startup, right? In a startup environment, and that's why it's actually very turbulent environment, right? And that's like where you need your energy, right? Not only to execute, but
Hmm.
also to inspire that and inspire others. And so you need to give a lot of energy. So how do you get that back to yourself, right? And for me, the love language of this is the body, right? And that's how I get this energy that I can later then transform and also give out to the world.
Alice, you have a very fascinating story starting with GoPuls and like also your background as well. I was in the Product Summit conference, so I heard your um, speak. Would you be so kind to walk us through your background from you have a very long journey into the startup field.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be the story would not be complete if we start actually pre-startup times, and that so I started my career as a QA engineer, so quality assurance engineer in tech, right? And I started at EPAM Systems, so which is right now is one of the largest tech solutions providers in the world. I think when I joined them, they were huge. There were 15,000 employees all over the world, but right now they're like something around 65K, right? And when you join the company at this level of maturity, what was particular about EPAM system was that they put a lot of effort in like really outlining the processes. So like any kind of processes, onboarding
Hmm.
processes, activating processes, client acquisition processes, right, delivery processes. So as it is like a giant agency, right? So it was a lot about like the client work and this excellence of like basically of the future project dependent on the excellence of the existing like or past projects, right? So that's why the company was very very particular about that, and that's when they so I got like a really extensive exposure to this environment and also training in order to get to that level that I can perform for like doing the client work. And of course, like in my domain in quality assurance, but also they really were great in terms of educating us outside of that world, right? So if you need to do this, you need to be able to kind of like have that level of domain knowledge, and that's what I did really well. So that's when I fell in love with the processes, and then three years later, like while doing my job, I won a scholarship. So I a
Hmm.
grant from German government to study in Germany, my master's. So I went to Germany, and then of course, like I found myself in a totally different environment of German academia world, and that was like wow, so different from my job, from my startup experience, from agile, and that was like from week one. I wouldn't say day one, but like week one. Let's be objective here, right? From week one, I just understand, okay, I want to go back to tech world as soon as possible. So let's get into this master and and finish it as fast as possible. So I was not optimizing on the like performance in the studies. I was really optimizing on the time I spent there so that I can actually go back and do the jobs that I love and to work in the environments that I love. So prior to that, I was thinking, well, maybe investment banking could be something for me. No, that was like clear, such a clear no to me. And of course, like took 2 years, right? So that because like that's how long the programs are in here in Germany, but to validate that, of course. But then as soon as I was out, I was applying to the jobs in tech and moved to Berlin right away. So and then that's when like I think during I didn't actually like apply that much. I think I sent out resumes to a couple of companies and two of them like started the processes with me, and one of them was Project A,
Mm.
and the other one um I don't actually remember like the name of the other. It was Outer One. Yeah, it was Outer One.
Oh yeah.
And
Okay.
then
Okay.
I got offers from both, and that was and I think Outer One was more focusing on the like on QA, and there was more possibilities to grow into the quality assurance and automation, right? And it was like a quite established startup, so safe bet. And then Project A, and operational VC in Europe, which is operating
Trouble.
and an exposure to like many more startups, right? So that was something that like having an access to a possibility to actually work with many different companies and to elevate their software development. And I joined as a QA engineer. That was something that was like more compelling to me in terms of like opportunities that will unlock. And that's how I started. And no kidding, like couple months into the job, I just realized I had such a reality check on what software development in startups world actually means. And it was such, I even wrote an article about that. It was such a different world compared to the world of a professional software development, where like when I worked with the clients, so like Thomson Reuters, PTC, like where the cost of a bug of mistake is just too high for the company, right? Like we're talking about the software that is used by Volkswagen to design the blueprints behind the machines, right? So like CATIA V5, for example. And it was so there the size of the quality assurance department on a project would be 30 people, right? When in the startup
Wow.
world, 30 people is a whole team, right? It's your business development, it's your software development, it's your marketing, it's your design, it's like everybody, and it's like we're talking about the Series A. So I'm not talking about the cases when like just two founders are raising round on a pitch deck, right? So that's how like the different the worlds, the two worlds were so different. And the major disappointment, I think, for me was that quality assurance in back then, we're talking about 2016, 2017, right? Quality assurance was not a thing in startup world here
Absolutely.
in Germany. So all of a sudden, instead of focusing on the quality of the product that the company is building, what I had to do is like to convince, and most like normally founders and like CTOs, that this is actually something worth investing in, like that was such a different like paradigm for me, and such a mental model shift. So I felt rather frustrated and underutilized, and generally the way how quality assurance is performed in the startups, and what are the benchmarks, right? What are the thresholds in quality that needs to be achieved were so underwhelming. Then I was like, wow, all right, so either I need to change the domain, like if I need to go back to leave the startup world and focus on my career in the corporate world, right? Like where there is an opportunity to develop my skills, and in large companies there is a whole the whole line, like the vertical line to ladder to climb for the quality assurance, right? You can be like a leader, manager, and so it's highly recognized and important profession. And here in the startup world, it was like basically it was non-existent. And so I luckily the people who I worked with were very open, and also had like capacity and also like invested in understanding like my background and like what I had to say and like my reasoning. And we found together with my back and boss, with my manager at Project A, that there would be actually an opportunity for me with the coaching to join the product management, and that's how I became a product manager. Yeah, and that was actually very, very smooth shift for me, because I already work, so I already use the concept in terms of, especially on the delivery side, right? I was part of the development team, right? So I knew the language, and I knew the language, and I spoke the language of the developers. I knew the pain points, right? As a QA, like, we're very detail oriented, right? And we need, like, in order to perform the QA, you also have to put yourself in the shoes of the customer, right? So I also this empathy, right, that you come with as a QA, right? This is also integral part of the job. So which was a transferable skill. I didn't know back then that it was, but it actually ended up to be so. And that's how so I did have to learn, of course, significantly, especially on the discovery side, right? So if the delivery side was not an issue, then I had to level up on the discovery, and that's where when I learned from, like, I will be very honest, I learned on the job, right? And I also learned on the from my colleagues and from the past projects that I've done, observing, also like collaborating with the product managers alike. So that's how the transition happened. And so that led me to the product management chapter in Project A. And there I had, every year, like, I had 2 to 3 engagements with different startups, and I spent there 5 years. So like, our engagements was rather like on the longest side of things. So I think up to 6 to 9 months with the venture, which is a significant amount of time to really to deploy the greenfield product, like we did with Home Day, that became the future platforms that they were building upon. Also, same we did with Evernest when developing their real estate platform, which was also very data oriented on that side. Exactly. And then also, like, a bunch of brownfield products. And that's basically all hands on, right? Jumping into the domain. That's how I became domain agnostic, because very, very fast you learn that domain knowledge is something that you can acquire while on the job. And and you can still deliver value while building that domain knowledge part. So yeah, and here I am at GoPuls.
What a great
Bernd, I think I stopped hearing you. Just a second. I think I still don't hear you. So I wonder whether it's on my side or on your side. Do you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay. No worries, we caught that one. So what a great opportunity for you to be at Project A Venture for 5 years, if I am not wrong.
Right, yeah.
And like every some months you work on one product, another product. It's just such a unique opportunity for product owner. Wow, you hit the jackpot.
Absolutely. And that was something, so in essence, right, when you look at Project A, they have the investment arm, right, which is like the fund itself, like deploying the capital to the prominent startups. They started with like Series A, but now it's actually pretty much also pre-seed and seed investments. And then we have like this operational team of 100 now 140 team members that are coming from different domains, and that is like it's really a truly privileged place to be there, right? Of course, it's quite an intensive job, but it's very rewarding experience to have the exposure to that many startups. That's why I think people who come from the agency world or like work in the agency world where you are exposed to different engagements, to different projects, to work with different companies. So I could definitely say that 1 year at such a company is equal to 2 to 3 years standing and
100%.
like in a different company. So that's 100% like that. So I'm
So what
really
was
grateful for that opportunity at Project A.
Alice, what kind of thing you look into whenever you take on a new project at Project A Venture? Like, as you know, I don't want you to go detailed because of NDA and stuff, but like typically when you start working with a startup, where would you start? Like, if for product manager who are listening to this podcast.
Yeah, so this is like, of course, Project A, like product management job is very unique in a sense that it is limited to the portfolio companies, right? So and this is a very, you could call it a boutique agency, right? That is only available for the limited number of companies into which Project A invested. Project I Fund invested. So whenever we look into the ventures, right, or like where we seek engagement and where like offer support, it all depends at which stage the company is right now, right? What do they need?
Right.
And when we're like talking about the pre-seed and seed, this is normally building something from scratch, right? So that's what we call the greenfield, right? And that's pretty much everything from product vision and product strategy and MVP building and rolling out this first version of product and then gaining the insights from the customers. Right. However, when you join the established company, like for example Zender, when I joined Zender, they were 300 people, and the company tripled in size over the next 3 months via this 2 merger and acquisitions initiative
Wow.
that happened by Zender acquiring Everroad and also buying out the European logistic business of Uber, right? So and there normally there is a specific pain that the company experiences, and my engagement there was to make to adopt the existing platform so that it can scale for the solution of a joint venture with Zender Italia, right? So where the company basically used to, so Zender normal carriers would used to have like, I don't know, X number of loads, right? But then for Zender Italia, they would actually look at 10x of those, right? And how do you make sure that the solution can scale? And if it wasn't built like this from the very beginning, right, with this scalability in mind, then it can be like very challenging. Okay, how do you make sure that, or like what adoptions you need to make in order to make sure that scalability actually happens at its later stage in mind. So this is, I would say, when the older the company is, then the more niche issues you as a product manager need to concentrate on to basically to deliver the value to the company and to its users, right? Unless we're talking about the pivoting case, right, where it's very clear. And I think that exactly what happened also to Home Day. So they started as as one business model or like project. They invested into one type of business, and very soon they realized, okay, they're not getting the traction that they need in order to secure the next investment round. So how can they pivot? So, and that's of course like then you focus on finding like a new business model, a new case. How can you as a company deliver value to the market? Yeah.
Okay, wow, okay. It must be really tough to work like the last example that you said. You have to pivot. Investors, they want to see growth. They want to see growth to be able to put in another some millions to fund your next round. And that operating under that level of stress in that environment is not easy. I've been in those environments, and I'm really admire like you sit here talk about all of this with such a calm voice, but boy oh boy, it must be hell to be sort of like navigating those waters, so to speak.
For sure. For sure, right? Because when we're talking about the survival of the company, right, like the survival of the company is at stake. You're battling for life, not a person's life, but a company's life. But still, it is it is very challenging. And I'm like even more than the team members, especially the early ones who like are really committed to the company. Huge respect to the founders to navigate those, right? And sometimes they would understand, they would see this, especially like if there are visionary founders on the team, they would sense it much earlier and see this coming much earlier, right? But they cannot talk about it to the team because they don't want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
generate panic, right? And how do you go to sleep like that? That's also very, very challenging. So I have a huge respect to all the founders, to anybody who basically decided to not only like to become an entrepreneur, but also like set up their own business. And that's, you probably as a business owner, right, you can also like chip in, but this is the amount of risks that you take, and on an everyday basis is quite significant.
So I would love to talk a bit about your current role. It's a very so for those who don't know, we had a product summit conference a few weeks back, and Alice was gracious enough to be one of our keynote speakers. And she broke down some of the things that she implemented at GoPuls. As I think you were the first product executive that you joined. So I would
Yeah.
love for you to sort of like walk us through your journey, and would be so curious about how you sort of like define the role of a leader and like act of leadership in sort of like navigating waters for scaling startups like GoPuls as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. So first of all, and not only I joined as a first product executive, I generally joined as a first product IC, individual contributor to the
Oh my
company.
goodness, that's even worse. So you basically ground zero type situation.
Almost, right? So there was when I joined GoPuls, and back then it was first A, and we can talk about this a little bit later. But when I joined first A, we were like 15 team members, right? So we were working in factory in this, like one of those apartments that turned into offices. So it was very, very early stage, and there was no product, there was no QA, there was no design, not even that, right? No user research. And and I came with a fancy and really shiny title, right? And VP product. But I think what is really important for everybody to understand, a VP in an early stage startup, it's actually the person who is also doing the work, right, and who is like laying the path with a process and the work that they do for the as a foundation for like building up the team, right? And that was basically essentially my job, right? So as a VP product, I was a very normal individual contributor who was gaining the domain knowledge about the
My goodness.
healthcare and the quick commerce market, and also the consumer side of the business, right, as well as B2B side of the business, and also like alongside working on the product strategy and vision together with the founders. I was also the one who was doing pretty much line jobs as hosting stand-ups for the engineering team, which was also to be hired, right. So we first started like working with the freelancers, and that was basically the start of it, right. I was designing, I was producing the first designs and redesigns effort in Figma.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly, and I was the one who was checking the quality of the features that engineers implemented, and yeah, and of course also did the discovery for that one too, right. So I think like the first, and this all alone, and I think that was like a quite tough time. Like it was quite tough time, because I think not because of the workload that I normally had, right, and that was basically I was doing the job of for
20 people.
employees. At least in the beginning, right, if we just like incorporate all the domains. But yeah, definitely it was, I was missing a team a lot. And that was, and the good thing that was also the mission, like one of the values that I was supposed to provide to go to First Day and now GoPuls, is to build the team and hire the team, and that's what we did. There were also no talent management processes, right? So that also had to be implemented, and that's when all this hands-on experience that I accumulated over my years at Project A, I think that's
Yeah.
what actually made it possible. So I think if you can take anything out of it, is that, especially like of product executives and
Sure.
startup founders, is you should hire for, like at the early stage, you should really hire somebody who is capable to do the job, like hands on the keyboard. This is crucial. Hiring an executive from a fancy company who never
Absolutely. It
touched
doesn't work.
the keyboard in the past, like, I don't know, even more than a year, doesn't make sense, because they will not be able to deliver the values that the company needs today. An early stage, we know early stage, there is no budget, there is no time, everything needed to happen yesterday, right? And you need to do what has to be done, right? If your company doesn't have a compelling website, then you were the one there to build it. And that's what I also did, like using Webflow, all-nighter. And then we have a like template-based website that is definitely better than the previous version of it. And that's the essence of the startup, like early stage startup job. You do what needs to be done, and it's not about
what
the
you
product,
said,
the role. Yeah.
Alice, you said exactly the same thing in the similar vein that Teresa Kane, director of product experience of Trevi Pay, 700 people organization, said. You both are in the trenches, and you don't give up on details because you are the VP of product or whatever. It's actually, I think leaders needs to not sit in their shiny office and say, hey, we are the leaders, we should not be taking care of the details. Actually, the devil is in the details.
Exactly, and I think the leadership is also about is a lot to me about leading by example, right? How can you demand, or like how can you expect somebody like being motivated if you are not that? How can you expect them to go like extra mile if you are not doing that as well, right? So, and this is I really like this concept of amplified, the strengths and the weaknesses of the founders in the teams,
Right.
and the concept is basically, if whatever strong qualities that founders have, this will amplify in the team, so like basically will be stronger, and then also the weakness, so will the weaknesses. And I do believe that the same holds for the managers as well. So that's why it is important to recognize what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and how can you actually work on them together with the team, and to be aware what you're passing on to the team, and that is extremely important.
That's fascinating. Like you said, that the weaknesses and the strengths of leaders will be amplified in the team.
Right.
Can you? I think I have an understanding of it, but can you elaborate? How does a weakness of a leader amplify in a team?
So, for example, let's take let's take a product leader is very strong on the business side of things, right? So like they are very strong on validating the business concept, or like coming up with this business concept, right? And then so there are certain things that they will care about, right? Because they're so good at that, and that is this. So they will also sort of like spot the imperfections of their teams and possibilities for their teams to grow in this in that domains, right? And that's why the feedback that they will provide will actually like just naturally be more fine-tuned to that strength that they have. So they will be inclined to teach and coach the team into this excellence, and of course, like with all the experience that you bring to the table, then the pitfall of this is you will calibrate the team the same ways that you perform, and that's why it is so important to have like the diverse teams in terms of not only the background, right, but also like the background in terms of the domain knowledge, execution, right, discovery, so, and to know what are you hiring for, right? And ideally, as a good leader, you would hire also to cover so basically to help the team to fill in the gaps, right, and to cover that part. Somebody could be like very perfectly data informed and data driven, but they would be lacking on the vision side of things, right, on the discovery side of things. And this is something that is important to, like, first of all, realize what are you good at, right, what you're not so good at, and what your team, what the company needs to be good at in terms of like makes the next level up, right? And that's what I meant.
In your opinion, so I would like to sort of like, this is my curiosity, because you have the right person to ask this question.
Yeah.
Let's say you're dealing with a founding team of 3. Right.
That's exactly my situation. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And then you've got a CTO, you've got a business guy, and you've got the third person. I'm not sure. Let's say like another business guy, 2 business guy, one CTO. And then you are at the pre-seed validation. No, let's say seed
Mhm.
validation, trying to see whether this idea would work. And then another scenario, same team, let's say they passed the validation phase and now they're having their first customers and they got to the revenue, and then they're seeing the growth in their revenue, and they're at the point that they can raise Series A. So walk me
Mhm.
through the team formation. If you were to pick your team for seed as a product leader, and if you were to pick your team as a product leader for Series A, how big your team would be for these two scenarios, and what kind of role would you pick? And I know it's a very general situation, but
Yeah.
if you were to put your bet on, number of teams and the roles, who would you pick and how many people?
Yeah, I think that. Let me summarize. So the first case is about pre-seed, right? So we're talking about product market fit, right? Maybe there is even no product
Exactly.
yet, right? So this is like what you called pre-validation. A pre-validation phase, and then we have the second one. Is it a scale up already? So they have already seen the growth and stuff, and how would I imagine the team, basically team
Yeah.
structure in both ways.
Yeah.
All right, as
Yeah.
you mentioned that, so in this equation, right, at GoPuls, I also manage the engineering part, right? So in your case, that let's take it out of the equation because we have a CTO, and let's have an assumption that CTOs and is covering all the engineering management part, and manages fully the engineering stream, right? So when we're talking about the pre-seed, what is important is to start small. You are so the company is on the and that's what just the nature of pre-seeds. They just do not have money, they do not have time, they need something fast. And so I would actually like the team would be very, very, very lean. So
Yeah.
maybe you would not even need to hire like your design function and the product function right away, because you just do not have this the validation in place, right? So the business model is still in design, or say there is already a business model, right? And there are some good ideas, and so we will be building the MVP. And I think for the product leader, it's also very important to be there, and also either hands-on or like to have your first product manager, so that you together bring the first version of the product to help the company validate its assumptions and hypotheses, right? Or
Got it.
you would need even to help them develop the hypothesis. What do we need to validate in order to make sure we can close this next round, right? When you are in a startup world, it's all about it's like in the sports, you need to have the team that will help you perform good in this season, right? And we are talking about, like, say the season is like a year, right? Or 2 years or 3 years, right? And the season, the length of the season is defined by the runway that you have. How much money do you
Got
have
it.
in the bank? So, and it's all about at some point in time it will be depleted. So it is important to make sure you secure the next you reach the milestones that investors want you to reach. You need to show a specific specific development on the metrics that they want to see, right? So that you can help to founders to unlock this next level of the company, right? So this is this is almost like a play in a video game, like until you get past the level 1 boss, you can't get to the level 2 challenges. So this is basically the way how I see it. So as lean as possible, and if
So
you can collaborate with
two
the
point.
external providers, do that.
So two points. Product owner needs to be really hands-on. It doesn't really make sense. The product lead is not hands-on, And then as
Exactly.
soon as much as possible, work with external provider, because you don't have a business model. Everything is
Yeah,
up in the air. You don't. That's
exactly.
very smart.
Yeah, it's just like
Hmm.
you need to keep yourself lean, right? So that you could survive as long as possible, right? And then in this case, like even working with external providers, I would get more creative there. There are design agencies that would take equity in exchange, like if you don't have cash, equity in exchange of the work that they will deliver to help you to validate your hypothesis, like, and to help you to build your minimum viable brand or minimum viable product, whatever you need to have in order to advance further in the market.
That's right.
Yeah, so like be as creative as you can, and yeah, keep the eye on the bank account and on the money. This is very important.
That's very
That was
true.
a
That's very true.
that was the first. That was the first, and that's why it is. For some people, it's just not fun to work in such environments, right? Because you have so
No.
many constraints, right? You and here's also like the thing. Maybe you asked me like who I would hire. I would also like to elaborate who I would not hire. There are people. There are people who are great professionals. Normally, they are more senior, but they really like they know how the good work looks like. So they
uh,
won't
uh,
take the time to do this work.
uh,
The
uh,
thing with the pre-seed and the early stage is that very often you just do not have that, right? So how do you make sure you can make decisions in this ambiguous environment where you are forced to make a decision? You need to place your bet somewhere. And here, like, I think fail fast is a perfect approach, right? It's like frameworks that one can use, because here, like, the speed and the speed and the number of experiments that you could run and then get like data or like the first validations points, that's where you could basically get that. And people like who are great, let's call it this professional track, right? um, um, who are great in this, they tend to not be satisfied with the level of work that they are doing, although that's exactly what the company needs them to do. So actually, like, early stage startup is not about doing great job. Like, a great job means doing something fast, doing something with a quality good enough that it can can result in the learnings. And many people are just not comfortable with that, like with doing a shitty job, but
yeah.
here doing this is better than perfectioning and like refining something and taking the time that it takes to do the good work. And that's what we know, right? Like, good work does needs time to do that. And
It
so
it
that's people I would keep for later.
it's just a different mindset. I really want to like tap into this. Like, if we can just like really go like talk about this, I think that's a huge win for the audience. It's like it's a different mindset. I think first and foremost, as an executor, especially in early stage startup, you need to be reaching to a self level of confidence and trust in your abilities, and a level of easygoing, and have this incremental mindset,
Yeah,
and to be able to really survive this weather, because it's not for everyone. At Grover, I remember early days we had Grover is a logistic monster product company. We just basically buy products rented to people. We pre-finance it. So we had logistic nightmare. We had, I mean, I cannot really go in detail, but anyways, we just brought in a senior executive from Amazon to help us. He quit in 3 weeks.
Absolutely, because it's madness, right? What the level of granularities and issues that you need to solve is like, for those kind of people, it's like, it's just a totally different game. They were building buildings, and now you invite them to work on this Lego concept that you're, sort of, developing. So it's like a totally different scale, and they get frustrated when they can't. That is a good thing. Like, this is like something that one needs to know. Like, people who are capable of doing good job and that are aware of this, when they are not empowered to do this job, they will get frustrated and they will quit. And this is exactly so. It is very important to understand which mind model, like which mindset is in front of you. And that's why it's extremely important to have a good hiring process, so that you can be very transparent to the
Yeah.
candidates, like what is actually the job about, right? And I joined the GoPuls not because I'm like back then first day, not because of the shiny title, because I knew that means nothing. This means like they could call me VP of whatever, right? Or like or executive. Like, doesn't matter. Like, the job that you need to do and the company that what company needs, this is the most important thing. So for the candidates, I would just really encourage them to dig deep to understand what the company really needs and what is the job about, and like what you are supposed to do on the job, and to abstract from the titles, because this is really not important in the early stage world.
I really love your analogy. A startup being a Lego, right? It's a lot of trying different combinations, see whether this house this way looks good, or maybe I need to add a door to it, not take out the door, add some windows in there. It's a constant high pace level of mixing and remixing and throwing a lot of killing and like throwing away ideas to be able to arrive at the skeleton, not a building, at the skeleton that say, okay, I can build something on top of this.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And this is a beauty of it, right? And this is also a curse of it. And it's just, you just need to know what you like, whether this you need to try whether this is for you or not. So that I think like it's very, I would recommend anybody, like, if they have an interest to, to understand like what is there, where they can deliver most value, and whether the startup world is for them, to have this experience in startup world, just to know, and to take maybe like the pink glasses off, because I think like startups is something cool. It's something dynamic. It's vibrant. It's like being part of something potentially big and early on, and it's a hard work. Unfortunately, it comes at a price.
Can I ask you, I mean, feel free to not say it, how many hours did you spend at the early days of GoPuls to be able to put together this? It sounded like you easily would spend like 50 hours, 60 hours a week. It's
Yeah, like,
insane.
for sure. Like, I wouldn't say, yeah, it's this is another thing, right? I don't remember when was the time that I would actually leave the office like at 6. Like, this is not
Hmm.
early stage startup is not a family friendly environment. It's
No.
so if you're going for it and you have a family and you have and you do not have like a partner who is willing to chip in, and for
Hmm.
you, this is not the right place. It's not it also doesn't have the security that potentially that one needs. And yeah, like I think 50-60 weeks, like our weeks, this is very, very common, and I would even say it's very close to the consultancy sort of, like, not it still won't be like, as I would say, BCG or McKinsey's of the world, right? So, or like investment banking early days, where like people would sleep in the office, right? I mean, let's disregard the Twitter example, right, when Elon took over, but definitely it is longer. It is not standardized work hours, and that would be normally included in the contract as well. So the overtime would be included in the contract, and I think, yeah, and basically everybody needs to understand that it's not a 40-hour job for sure. Especially also if you are the early stage, like if you're a leader there, yeah. So your work time is like as as long as it takes you to do the job.
Yeah, and then it's like the type of, I mean, I resonate with so much of what you your character. I think we share such a we have a strong entrepreneurial side. I think people like us, when they take over a responsibility, we're not letting go of it. We are going to own it and really deliver on it. It's just like, then the matter of the hours that we put in, we don't even like talk about it. We just like, we have to deliver it. This is our responsibility. And then I think you're challenge seeking people that, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to verbalize it, but like I did definitely, like when I remember my time at Grover, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. sometimes we would leave, easily 60, 70 hours per week, and then this is what it is. We have to do it. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I am working that overtime, and no, it's just like the work needs it. I mean, if I don't do it, nothing else would get done. Everything for that function centers around me.
Exactly. And that's why there is a window for an opportunity in your career where you actually can afford doing that, right?
Exactly.
And this is like, this is, it's not wrong that startups are associated, and then generally like the early stage startups like are associated with normally with the younger founders, generally with younger teams, right? Who have this mental capacity, who have this physical capacity, who has no obligations to the outside world besides that. Like who are placing the bet on their time, investing it and like into something that potentially is out to will pay off in the future. And this is like a lot about that. And the work is brutal, and the work hours are also there, and sometimes it's also the weekends. So
Alice, I'm not taking your time anymore. It's been a lovely, lovely 62 minutes of really organic conversation. I really appreciate that you came by. You have a very busy schedule. I'm really aware of it, to share your hands-on experience with us. I would love to, hopefully, the time permits, to invite you again after summer, whenever you have time, to have a part 2. We wanted to talk about a lot of other topics, branding side of things, how you sort of like did the rebranding of GoPuls, which is, I'm really interested for the audience to hear it. Thanks
pleasure.
a lot.
Yeah, my pleasure, and would love to chat again. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Ciao.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.